Hi, my name's Steve and welcome to the Seaside Allotment channel, and today I'm just going to talk about how I protect the polytunnel beds when we're going to have a decent frost at night. And it's definitely worth doing. I've got a nice slick system for doing it. I'll show you how it works. So this is the way I do it. I've got a very long run of fleece and just a tile batten, I think it is, which I will wrap it around like that, and then I'll clip it on just with one of these little clips here, and that's enough because all I've got to do is just hold it in place. And I'm going to hold it in place, I'll show you, down the back in that gap there, and this is the north facing wall of the polytunnel. So even though it sits down there and it wraps up and clips onto here, it's not really giving any shade. In fact, it's actually providing a kind of warm wall for these salads, protecting them from the cold wall of the polytunnel. So I'm going to get that clipped on and I'll show you in a minute what it all looks like. So there it is, clipped on nice and tight, and the batten will actually stand on these little clips here off the ground. Just makes it easier to clip it on. So there we go, you can see the fleece now is just dropped down in that little gap behind the raised bed, and it'll stay there. And as I said, it's really great because there's this really nice warm wall now. Effectively it makes the polytunnel a double skin, and as you can see from the sunlight on here, there's no shade at all on the salad beds, so that works really nicely. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set the tripod up and I'm going to show you in real time how long it takes me to put the fleece down and take the fleece up again. So I really love this system, and I think key to it is leaving it in place all the time so that there's really no effort to just pop it down. Just quickly undo those clips, and it actually drapes all the way to the end of the polytunnel. So it's a 20-foot long, I think, this piece of fleece. And yeah, the clips just, they really make it so simple. And you might think that, just a few seconds of reduced effort isn't really worth it, but I'm just lazy. So it really does make the difference for me between popping it down and not popping it down. So there we go, that's all done. And then putting it back is even quicker. Just quickly roll it up into a kind of ball, football, a tube, and just use the clips again, just clip it back on. You can see, incredibly quick and easy. And that's it, that's pretty much it. I'll just drape that behind the containers that I have in the corners. And that is, there we go, job done. So that's how I protect the bed where I keep my most tender salad crops. And that fleece also is big enough to protect everything that I kind of have in the bed down the side. And so I'll have things there like ochre, I'll have like overwintered brassicas, I'll have carrots, things like that. So all of those will get protected by that really quick fleece system. Now, if I'm a bit more worried, if the frost's going to be a bit harder than that, then I'll also protect my spinach and my grenoble red beds. And yeah, I'll show you how I do those. It's not quite as quick and easy. So this little bed I just protect with freestanding fleece. Just store it in that bucket, just popped in there. That also just reduces the amount of sunlight it gets because fleece does degrade in the sunlight, and if you leave it out and you'll find it's all fallen to pieces within 6 months. And you can see it's just a bit more of a faff. I mean, it's not that much more effort, but this bed's only a quarter of the size of the big bed that I just done, in roughly about the same sort of time. So it's about 4 times as long, and it just doesn't look as nice, and yeah, it's just more of a faff. But it's pretty quick. So there you go, that little bit of effort, it does make all the difference, and yeah, so I like to do that, and I probably end up doing it because we don't get a huge number of frosts over here. I probably end up taking it up and down probably something like 20 times, something like that. And of course, if I forget one day, it doesn't really matter. That these things will stand a frost, well, unless it's really bad, and so it does make a difference. Now, I just talk quickly about the kind of dynamics of the polytunnel, because a lot of people think that the polytunnel is really warm at night, and that's just not the case. Even though the polytunnel can get really lovely and warm, and it's roasting hot at the moment, even though it's freezing outside during the day, all that heat is pretty much dissipated by maybe 10 o'clock at night or something like that. And the polytunnel can actually be colder than it is outside. And if there's a bit of wind, that energy in the wind actually keeps the air warmer than it is in the polytunnel, where the air is still and unmoving. But the benefit of the fleece is that what happens during the day is that this dark soil and the dark paths, they all warm up quite considerably during the day. And then when you put the fleece on, it traps that warmth that's in the ground, just above the plants. Now, sometimes having the fleece touching the plants is a bad idea, but I find that when there's no wind and when it's dry, it doesn't really matter whether the fleece touches the plants that much. So I do both, and I've not really noticed much of a difference. So on this side, where I've got it clipped to this here, it's held a little bit off the plants, but it still traps that warm air in really nicely. So that's the approach that I take. And if I have to leave the fleece on all the way through the day, that doesn't seem to bother the plants at all. They don't grow very much, but they stand quite happily. But I will try and take it on and off, just so that the plants can get the maximum advantage of any sunlight, because they need it. If you're constantly harvesting them, it's best to give them as much light as possible. So basically, that's my polytunnel protection strategy against frost. The outside beds, coal frames and little hoop tunnels, I've got different varieties in those beds in the main, and so I don't worry so much about them. They're hardier varieties, and they just take the chances basically. The only time I would ever consider fleecing the outside beds is if it's going to get sort of -8, -10 or something like that, which is really unusual here. So that will probably only happen once a year, if that, maybe once every 2 years, or once or twice every 2 years, something. So it's very unusual, and that makes it worth the effort just to pop a bit of fleece down on some of the higher value beds that I really want to keep going until spring. So with that, I'll wrap up, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon.